Hi, this is Greg Jameson with Web Stores Limited, and about once a week I record a chat with someone in the industry or a store owner about various topics that relate to your e-commerce websites. I'm here today with Chris Wiegman, and I'm actually going to let Chris say a little bit about himself. We're going to talk about WordPress security today and the types of things that you can do to protect yourself and your website. But Chris, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Greg. My name is Chris Wiegman. I'm a senior web engineer for a company called 10up, which has quite a big presence in the WordPress world. A lot of our people have led previous versions, so on and so forth. I'm the founder I was the Better WP Security WordPress plugin, and I sold that to iThemes. It's now iThemes Security. About 2.5 years ago or so, and I still work with enterprise-level WordPress security quite a bit.
Okay, and the whole iTheme security plugin is really the reason why I wanted to have Chris on, because I knew he was an expert in this, and it's one of the plugins, for those of you who are my customers that might be watching this, it's one of the plugins that I use to make sure that your site is as secure as possible. I also use another one, I don't know if Chris is familiar with it, called Wordpress that I use primarily for scanning a site to make sure that it's not infected. It does allow you to remove some problems if they've been found, but it doesn't really protect you on the front end like iTheme Security does. So go ahead and tell us a little bit, Chris, about kind of the premise behind iTheme Security and what it does.
Sure. It has changed a little bit. I've actually been removed from the project, that particular project now, for going on 1.5 years. But the original premise was simply enforcing best practices to make sure things like passwords were taken care of. You know, all the stupid little things that you need to do when you set up a site, making sure that was all taken care of to keep a site secure. I was working for a university where it was all the plugins I was trying to manage to do all that stuff and keep everything up to date. It would be too much of a hassle, so I started putting all those features together into one. And that's where WP Security came from.
Great. So some of these best practices, maybe we can chat about them a little bit here. I know that, WordPress is the most popular content management system out there right now, and one of the reasons is it's open source, which means that it can have all of these plugins attached to it, and there's some great plugins out there, but it seems like frequently people, when they're building their plugins, they aren't worried about security, they're worried about the features of whatever the plugin is that they're trying to do, and as a result of that, sometimes plugins can be one of the issues that causes a problem with WordPress.
Most definitely. Most hacked sites are the result of an outdated plugin somewhere on there. Although even with the plugins, keeping them up to date is going to take care of 90% of plus problems.
Yeah, the problem that I see is that the hackers are always trying to be one step ahead of the plugin developers, and the plugin developers are kind of constantly responding to the latest threats or holes that somebody has said, and so you end up seeing that plugins, if you look on your WordPress back-end panel there, the dashboard, that every week it's telling you to update some new plugin because of the fact that there's this constant leapfrog of the hackers doing something, somebody found a hole in a plugin and they have to release a patch for the plugin, so it's now version 1.1.2.3.5, whatever it is.
Well, some of those are security, but security updates are actually more rare. It's usually a feature compatibility with a new version. In any case, it's the WordPress to auto-update those plugins for you, and it'll get that within, I believe it's 24 hours. Anything .org and a lot of the bigger plugin houses, they'll just take care of those updates for you. You don't have to go once a week and worry about them.
Okay, so in addition to plugins, one of the areas that people can obviously break into your site is by having a weak password. We obviously teach people all the time, don't use a username of admin and don't use a password type thing. And WordPress has actually gotten better at this in the last year or so, where they have a thing that they can kind of enforce strong passwords, and they randomly generate a nice long password for you. People don't like those passwords because of the fact that they can't remember them. And I've got some methods that I use since I run so many different websites. I keep track of those utilizing a program called KeyPass, which stores passwords on your computer behind an encrypted password to begin with. So you only have to remember one password, and then you can store hundreds of other passwords. Do you have any suggestions on how people keep track of all of these obscure passwords?
That's how I do it. I use a program called 1Password. There's LastPass that's out there that you can get started with for free. I honestly couldn't tell you a password for any site I have. I probably have 2,000 or 3,000 of them in my database. And I couldn't tell you one of them anymore. All I know is my password is command. As a Mac user, it's command / for everything. It's great.
Yeah, and that's really what I recommend to store owners. You might think, well, I've only got, the one website that I'm running or whatever, but make it a secure password, because that is definitely a vulnerable area to any website, not just a WordPress website. And if you are uploading files yourself through FTP, that can be a place of vulnerability too, where you need to have a secure password.
Well, FTP is kind of obsolete. You should be using SSH. I don't know a site host that doesn't allow SSH anymore. It's been a long time since I've seen one that doesn't, and that's why I'm trying to use FTP at all. And with the password thing, just to kind of circle back to that a little bit, two things tend to be with WordPress. People think either they don't want to forget the password, so they set it to what they always use, or the site's too small, it's not going to get hacked. Both are wrong. It's not somebody targeting the site that's trying to hack them. It's just automated as far as the target. Here's a domain, let's run these tests up. You have this whole version of whatever it might be, and people get in that way. The second thing is, once they do get the password on that, can they use it on your bank? Can they use it on something else? There's an awful lot of that too.
And I think that you made a really good point there, that I think a lot of, at least small e-commerce shop owners don't understand, or website owners don't understand in general, because I've had people say this to me. It's like, well, why would anybody want to hack me? I don't have anything. I'm just a little guy. And the fact is they aren't trying to hack you. It's all automated, as you said. There's these robots going out there, and they don't care what they are attacking. They'll attack anything and everything, just because you're a small guy and you aren't Home Depot or Target or some of these people that have been hacked. The robots don't care. They're just out there to get whatever information they can.
And not even so much information. Security, one of the bigger names in WordPress security, they have a really good web application firewall product, kind of an insurance product, if you will, or if your site's hacked, they'll clean it for you. But they do a lot of analysis of these things. One of their attacks last year, they turned the clock off when they had 173,000 different sites that were being used to attack another site. So they might not be even trying to get information from you. They can go back, they can take over that's a computer. That's got computing resources. So it can go back out and do other things that they want it to do. And that's, a bot network. And that's oftentimes what they're going to do with these smaller sites.
Yeah, so, and you may not know this, because I'm not sure I completely understand it, but you've got these hackers out there that have built this software to go in and attack these sites. What kind of information are they trying to get? Or if they're not trying to get information, why do they do it? Is it just something to say that I did do it? Or is there really a monetary gain behind this thing?
What's the reason? In some cases, the amateurs are doing it to say they did do it. Oh, look what I can do. I mean, that does happen, but it's not common. It's typically for money. They can sell time, just like buying time on a supercomputer. And you look at the big level supercomputers, buy time on a botnet. you can sell these command and control programs to other organizations and other entities, and then use it to take on a site. Here you see these hacks where name a big company's been taken down and demanding a ransom. That happens all the time, and they're doing that by taking over other computers and other websites and using those resources back at them. So being able to sell that network and sell time on that network for somebody else's purposes, it's quite lucrative.
Yeah, so you were saying ransom there, that seems to be one of the more common types of malware that's out there anymore, is what's called ransomware, where, yeah, they do take over your computer, and for a price, they'll give it back to you.
Yeah. And that could be distributed via what they call a drive-by attack. If a website's taken over in the right way, just executing JavaScript on an insecure browser can deliver that type of payload. There's a lot of, there's another reason, even a small site, all you have to do is hit it by accident. How many times do you search Google for something random and you wind up on the site that hasn't been updated in 4 or 5 years and clearly hasn't been touched? If it's in there, that's going to get you. That's one more for what was probably no effort at all, and it's been hacked. Just a random found the site, found the vulnerability, and ran with it.
Yeah, and so besides the ransomware, a small site, may not be storing credit card numbers, but they may be storing email addresses, which seems to be another reason why the hackers would be breaking into whatever site they can.
Email addresses, names, maybe your website address. That's common stuff in WordPress. Your zip code, whatever various PII or personally identifiable information. There's all sorts of things stored on these sites. And that's one of the reasons SSL's such a big thing, or secure site layers, when the encryption, that little green bar, it's not so much to protect your site. It's they're going to get, if you have vulnerability, they're going to get in. It's to protect your users' privacy and to protect their data and transmit to and from your site. That's a bigger issue. There's all kinds of personal data, whether it be in a traditional hack or even just somebody sitting at Starbucks listening to the network steal from you.
Yeah, so speaking of Starbucks there, then what about open networks? If you go into a coffee shop and they're using an open network, how does that affect your vulnerability to getting hit?
On WordPress, it's probably a little bit higher than if you were used Facebook. It was over 4 or 5 years ago now. Firefox, way back in the Firefox 3 days, some guy made something called Firesheet. And it was a Firefox extension that would sit on the open network and would give you a sidebar, and it would watch anybody log into Gmail, Facebook, whatever it might be. And it would show you who they are, and you could click on it, and you were them. It really was that easy. So what all sites do is they switch to SSL. That's why you see that little green bar on Facebook and on Twitter and all those sites. That was to prevent those types of attacks. Well, most WordPress sites still don't encrypt their stuff.
Yeah.
So, open network, it'd be that's a real easy way to get a hold of some WordPress credentials. A blogging conference and some of those types of things would be open picking on WordPress sites if somebody really wanted to do that type of thing.
One of the things that it seems like I've heard is that people think that because they have their own computer secure, they're like, well, I use a Mac, my computer's secure, or even I use a PC, but I've got, all this antivirus software on there, and so my own computer is safe. But I think one of the things that people don't realize is that those softwares protect your computer, but they don't necessarily protect you from being a host and transmitting malware from one website to another, regardless of the fact that your computer seems to be operating fine. You can still be spreading the problem, whether you realize it or not.
Well, the difference there is your website is on a different computer. It's not on your local laptop or whatever that might be. So it can still be infected and causing all kinds of issues. That is very true.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can be spreading a problem through your email or through visiting a website, even if you don't know it.
Very much so.
So what kinds of given the fact that there are all these issues, and it seems like there are more and more hackers every day, there's more and more issues with people getting hit on their websites, whether it be WordPress or anything else. What kinds of things do you really recommend that people do if they are running a website to protect themselves?
The biggest thing is just simply take it seriously. Watch, you know your site better than anyone. If all of a sudden you get, normally you get 10 users a day, and you log in at lunch tomorrow and you have 20,000 users, something's wrong there. What happened? Or whatever the symptom might be, but take it seriously. Pay attention to your stuff. Use a real password. Use things like SSL and keep things updated. Yeah, that protects both sides. You're trying to protect your users at that point, and you're trying to protect your site itself. Trust your host. Many of the better hosts, WP Engine, SiteGround, all those guys have really serious security measures in place to help the site. The $3 host whatever you want down here, it might get you started, but it's not focused on security. A real host, a good host, is going to help you with that just as much as some of these other things. But simply paying attention and keeping things updated will take care of 99% of it.
Yeah, so in the iThemes security plugin, there's a whole bunch of settings. And typically what I do is I go in there and I try to tighten things down as much as I can with those settings. Is that something that you recommend, or are some of those really kind of optional?
A lot of them are optional. Some of them might be, depending on what your site needs to do, changing some of that stuff might not even be applicable. So just use whatever is good for your site. If you enforce strong passwords and you have a whole bunch of users that never, they sign up once and they leave, you might be ticking off users trying to sign things up. So maybe that doesn't work for you. But every piece you turn on and everything you do to protect your site is another step forward. If you can take 3 steps forward, that's better than no steps forward. If you can take 50, great, that's even better.
Okay. One of the settings I know in there is about locking down the htaccess file. Is that something that you would recommend? All right, your cat's in the video here.
Yeah, he's the world's worst office assistant.
I should have brought my cat in too. Cats make for great viral videos, right?
Something like that. Yeah, if you can lock down the htaccess file, and I can't remember, it's been a while. I don't even use Apache anymore, to be honest. It's been a long time since I've turned on the settings that were in that htaccess or iThemes, but it does do a number of items, which I want to say I gotta be honest, Greg, I don't remember all that it did, but it was one of the better ways. The lower you can get to secure something, the better. If putting a firewall in an application doesn't really do a whole lot for you. You can't block it when it's already there. So htaccess being part of Apache, if you can block something at that level, it's before it gets to WordPress. That's a good thing. If you can block it before it gets to Apache, that's even better.
All right, great. Well, do you have any other final words of wisdom here for people running websites?
Biggest thing is if you're making money off of it, and this is any kind of livelihood at all for you, just take it seriously. Pay for a good host and pay attention to your site, and you'll probably be fine.
Yeah. Now, if they do get hacked, let's say somebody does get hacked, because even with iThemes security and WordFence and all these other things, you tighten everything down. The hackers are smart people. They are obviously looking for new ways to get in all the time, and at some point they're going to. I always tell people that it's not a question of if you're going to get hacked, it's going to be when. And so once it does happen, do you have anything that you would say, hey, these are the things that you really should do, other than the fact that you really should have had a backup every day?
And hopefully you have a backup, but call somebody who specializes in it. Unless you're a developer, I could sit here and give you a 20-point list of things to do, and unless you're a developer, half of it is probably not going to make any sense. Go to a company called Security. Go to SiteLock. Go to HackRepair.com. There's a good number of sites or services out there that specialize in cleaning this up, and it's usually a couple $100.
But it's better than letting it happen again. If you miss it and you have any users at all, there goes your trust. And a couple $100 is totally worth the trust of your users to get it done right.
Yeah, and I think that that's what's really important here is that sometimes, people will get hacked and they think, I don't want to spend $500 or $600 to get my site back. That's not an expense I was expecting type thing. And they kind of, blame their host or blame their developer or whatever. They understand that they may have put a plugin in that did it, whatever the case is, but it's frustrating. The fact is that, that you're going to have to fork out some money to get it fixed up. But like you said, your reputation is worth more than that, regardless of whether or not somebody got in there and stole credit card information is not nearly as relevant as the fact that even if you've got a site and you're just have an informational site out there and somebody goes there and now they get infected or they see that your site is down or whatever, that reflects upon you as a business person.
Well, just like you're talking about, you can blame your developer. Well, what happens when your user blames you?
Yep.
And somebody will.
Yeah, and that's the bottom line is the user that visits the website is the one that is going to be at kind of the bottom of the food chain there, and they're trusting you, whether you're trusting your developer and your developer's trusting the host, whatever. The fact is your customer's trusting you, and you need to get it fixed.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time here, Chris. And you got any other final thoughts here? How can people get a hold of you or visit your site if they want more information?
Sure, you can find me at chriswiegman.com, ChrisWiegman.com. I'm also on Twitter and pretty much any big social networks under the same name. So.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.